When Amelia arrived at her apartment building, she spotted Ava through the window of her rented apartment. Though technically her tenant, Ava was more like a close friend, the closest friend Amelia could confide in about the heartache that had plagued her for years. Now, as Ava prepared to move out and get married, she was thrilled. "I'll try not to start complaining as usual," Amelia muttered to herself aloud. Determined to focus solely on Ava and her happiness during this visit, Amelia hoped Ava's life would be filled with love, understanding. Maybe a few kids, that's all anyone really needs. Climbing to the third floor, Amelia rang the doorbell. Ava, seemingly expecting her, promptly opened the door. "Oh, Amelia, I'm so glad to see you. Stephen went home, and I've been feeling so lonely. He's working online to save up before our wedding. Our parents are helping with the down payment on a mortgage, so we're saving for the next payments. We're also planning a honeymoon on an island. I came to tell you," Amelia interrupted, "that you'll be staying with me as a guest for the 2 weeks before the wedding, and don't you dare argue. I can't give you anything because all my salary goes towards paying my mother-in-law's mortgage, and I can't do anything about it. Harry is starting first grade this year, and I don't even have money to prepare him for school," Amelia said wistfully, then remembered her promise not to complain. "Well, tell me, have you chosen the restaurant for the wedding?" "Yes, a small and cozy one." "Will you come with me to pick out my wedding dress?" "Of course, but I'll have to bring Harry along. He doesn't want to stay at home." "Are things really that bad between you two?" No talk of grandma today, Ava. We're only discussing your wedding." "So where are you planning to live after the honeymoon? Should I hold off on renting out the apartment?" "Go ahead and rent it out," Ava replied. "We'll be staying at his grandmother's house on the outskirts of the city for now." Although Amelia had recently moved to the city, she knew there was a small neighborhood on its outskirts with old, ordinary private houses. The popular mansions were built here, and the locals used to love this place, but Amelia hadn't seen it due to ongoing construction. Ava continued enthusiastically, "We recently visited his grandmother. I loved it, even though we had to work there. She manages everything herself, and although she's alone, she's lively and quick. I think we've already become friends." "Oh, Ava, you're the kind of person who can be friends with everyone," Amelia said, sadness evident in her voice. "How are things at work?" "Yes, everything's great. I'm very happy with my job." "Then you need to realize that your problems are at home. Until you resolve them, you won't be satisfied with your life. I've been telling you this forever. Admit to yourself that you don't have a family and won't have one as long as you stay with Gary and his mom. I'm sure she's the problem, so either make friends with her or divorce your husband. There's no third option." "Harry, and she doesn't like me much either. I'm considering divorcing him before my son gets too attached. Harry looks up to him as a father figure, but he ignores him and only sometimes listens to his mom. I feel like he'll never love Harry. Why did I marry him? How foolish." Amelia exclaimed in despair. "You did the right thing. Every experience is valuable, even a bad marriage. Otherwise you'd be wondering if you could have given Harry a loving father. So please don't torment yourself with these thoughts." They talked more about the upcoming wedding, set a time for dress shopping, and then Amelia headed home. But home for Amelia was the very apartment she had just left. It had belonged to her late grandmother, who left it to her. Amelia's parents lived in another city. 7 years ago, Amelia had fled there to live with her grandmother. Unfortunately, her grandmother passed away 2 years ago, which was a difficult time for Amelia. She was a small child at the time of her grandmother's unexpected death, and with a lack of money, she agreed to Gary's proposal, so she found herself married to a man nearing 40 who hadn't matured at all. Initially, his immaturity and complete inability to manage life amused her, but when he brought home his paycheck, which barely covered basic needs, fear began to set in. Right after the wedding, Gary and his mother took out a mortgage on a 1-bedroom apartment, with Amelia silently paying from her salary like a fool. The remainder went towards daycare for Harry and buying groceries. Neither her husband nor his mother did much cooking. They relied on convenience foods. Initially, before the mortgage was finalized, Amelia cooked because she always had money. Later, they switched to fast food due to financial strain. Luckily, Harry ate at daycare during weekdays, and on weekends, Amelia used the rent money Ava paid her. It was Ava who advised Amelia not to disclose the full amount she paid for the apartment. "Otherwise, dear, you'll end up their slave. They already live off you completely, taking your salary, scrimping on groceries. Look at yourself, neglected. You need to look the part at work too. You're a college lecturer, I understand. But Amelia, you're perfectly capable. Harry will start school soon, you have your own apartment and a great job. Why do you need your husband and mother-in-law? Walking home, she thought. Why do I always end up with such immature men? Even Harry was born to such an irresponsible man, whom his father practically forced to marry the right woman's daughter. His mother hinted to her that if she didn't leave her son alone, she would do everything to make them divorce. Amelia decided such a husband was not for her, so she moved to this city hoping the man she had once loved passionately would never know he had a son. Growing up, she felt he didn't need to know. Harry had asked about his father once, and she had told him then that his dad didn't want to be his father. Harry struggled with it for a long time, wondering why his father acted that way, but eventually he accepted it. When Gary appeared soon after, Harry never considered him his father. Now Amelia was firm in her decision to file for divorce. In 2 weeks she could move into her own apartment. No longer needing Ava's help, Harry will be the only man in my life now, and no more experiments with marriage, she resolved. I'll put all my efforts into saving up for a 2-bedroom apartment because when Harry grows up a bit more, 1 bedroom will be too small for us. And I'll definitely do it because I can't rely on anyone else. My parents are retiring soon, and they have my father's mother, Grandma. She's paralyzed, and my mom takes care of her all by herself. Dad helps too, but it's mostly Mom taking care of Grandma. Only her mother knew about Amelia's romantic tragedy. She had supported her then, and said they would help her as much as they could. By the way, her mother didn't approve of her marriage either, thinking she had rushed into it. She and Gary had married just 3 months after meeting. Amelia was nearing her home but suddenly decided to take a walk. After half an hour, instead of going straight home, she would pick up Harry from daycare. There was a small square near her house, and Amelia headed there, strolling for half an hour, admiring the flower beds with colorful roses. Feeling serene, she went to the daycare. The children were outside, and Harry, after getting permission from the teacher, joyfully ran up to her. Can we walk around? I don't want to go home. Grandma will scold you again for coming back late from work and not helping with chores, he said. She tells you that every day as if you don't work. Just walk around, you know. Harry, I did take a walk today right before coming to get you, but that's not enough. Let's go to the cafe we sometimes pass by and have ice cream and pizza too. And pizza too, Harry grinned. They turned into the cafe and returned home late, just as Gary returned from work. He and his mother looked grimly at Amelia and Harry. Had a good walk. What are we having for dinner? Asked Gary's mother. Harry and I aren't hungry. You can make something for yourselves, Amelia calmly replied. Harry ate at daycare and my friend treated me. We'll go straight to the room to read a story. Amelia and Harry didn't even step into the kitchen. Harry, satisfied, hurried off, grabbing his mother's skirt because he spotted a beautiful woven basket in the corner of the kitchen. Harry, see what's over there? Gary got it for you, said his grandmother. You'll go with her to the market for vegetables. You're a big boy now. Amelia remembered seeing that basket with a broken handle by the trash bin that morning. Have they lost their minds? Last time Gary brought a suitcase with 1 wheel, and I barely convinced him to throw it out. Do they have some kind of illness or something? It was an awful night. Disgusting. They read a story, and Amelia, as if accidentally, fell asleep with Harry on the couch. In the morning they got up early, quickly got ready, and left for daycare quietly, not waking anyone. During lunch break, Amelia talked to her colleague, who had recently separated from her husband. Her colleague advised her on the first steps to take. Amelia was in a hurry because she feared that pity for Gary would make her change her mind. A month and a half later they divorced, and Amelia and her son moved into their own apartment. Soon, Ava and her husband came to visit. Ava, happy for her friend, mentioned she had seen Gary and was very surprised by his condition. You know, he sincerely mourns that you left him. I even believed him, Ava said. Gary is really upset about the divorce. He recently came to us and complained that his mother doesn't let him live peacefully and interferes too much. He also said that the happiest time in his life was the first 6 months with me before his mother intervened in our relationship. At that time, she had some man, but he couldn't handle her meanness and left. I think if it weren't for her, I could have convinced him to change jobs, and maybe we would have lived okay without great love. Gary is a good person, just lacking initiative because he listened to his mother all his life. Do you feel sorry for him? Ava asked in surprise. I feel sorry for him and myself, Amelia sadly replied. Maybe you're right, but his mother won't let you two live together anyway. She's a terrible owner, she thinks you took her son away, Ava said. I feel sorry for that guy too, Ava's husband Stephen chimed in. Looks like he grew up completely without a father. So Amelia, get Harry into some sports section, there will be men around him who will raise him? Yeah, Stephen, you're right, Amelia said, reflecting on how her excessive love for her son might resemble her former mother-in-law's. 2 weeks later, Harry started his busy school routine, as his mother had hoped. A month later, Amelia decided to attend a physical education class to see what activities interested the kids. She hoped to discover her son's preferences, but unfortunately, there were no clear signs of any particular talent emerging at school for him. Amelia asked other parents at the meeting if they were considering sending their children to a sports school, but no one was thinking about it yet, considering it too early. Why would I send him to basketball now? What if he doesn't grow tall enough and can't make it into professional basketball, one mother said. I'll wait to see if he does well in studies. If he finds it tough, I'd rather send him to a chess school than boxing or wrestling, another mother said. Amelia was perplexed, but then she suddenly thought, why am I even taking advice from these women? I should start with Harry himself. I think he'll probably say he wants to be a football player, Amelia anticipated. To her surprise, Harry said he wanted to learn how to swim. Every boy wants to learn to swim. I'm talking about choosing a sport where you can succeed and become a champion, because everyone in life must strive for victory, like in high jump where the athlete keeps raising the bar higher and higher, and higher. By the way, swimmers also have competitions, Amelia explained. Well, I'm going to learn to swim, Harry stubbornly insisted. Is this your decision, Harry, or did someone advise you, Amelia asked. Yes, it's mine, Harry confirmed, then suddenly asked, Mom, can you swim? Of course I can, although I swim like a dog, Amelia chuckled. Like a dog? How's that, Harry asked in surprise. I can't explain it to you, that's just how we all swam when we were kids, Amelia said. No, I want someone to teach me. Teach me. What's his name? Harry hesitated. A coach, Amelia prompted. Yeah, a coach, Mom. Is it expensive? Harry quickly asked. If it is, I won't learn. I'll learn to swim like a dog, just like you. It's not more than we can manage, Amelia chuckled. I'll earn the money. The next day at the store, Amelia ran into Stephen. They started talking, and she mentioned that Harry wanted to pursue swimming professionally. But I'm afraid he'll start swimming now, then want to be a figure skater or something else, Amelia said. Amelia, first of all, he needs to learn to swim. Anyway, I think you agree with me on that, Stephen replied. Yes, Amelia nodded. You're right. Not learning to swim in childhood is bad, Amelia agreed. And secondly, Stephen continued, he's still too young. He has time ahead of him to make a final choice, but knowing how to swim will always be useful to him in life. So it's okay if he starts swimming now. Stephen, do you happen to know if there's any swimming club in our city? Amelia asked. Yes, there is. I even know someone who works as a swimming coach. He can help you. He'll even assess if Harry has potential for swimming professionally, or if he'll just be an enthusiast. He's a good guy. We went to the same school. He's a year older than me. Want me to give you his phone number? Just tell him I recommended you, Stephen offered. Let's do it, Amelia said excitedly. Stephen gave her the phone number, then called his friend George and said, George, a mom of a first grader named Harry will call you soon. Don't turn her down, okay? I never turn anyone down, George replied. Then I'm reassured about Harry, Stephen said. Stephen hung up the phone and turned to Amelia. Well, George said you can call him this evening, he informed her. Stephen gave her the phone number, then called his friend George and said, George, a mom of a first grader named Harry will call you soon. Don't turn her down, okay? I don't know, the boy honestly replied. I don't even know how to swim yet. When I was learning to read, I didn't tell anyone for a long time that I could read. My grandmother said it was right not to show off how smart you are, so I didn't, but my teacher at school praised me. And all my classmates were still reading syllable by syllable. It was right not to show off how smart you are, so I didn't, but my teacher at school praised me, and all my classmates were still reading syllable by syllable. Well, reading can be like that. Swimming is a bit different. Tell me honestly, are you afraid of the water? George asked. No, Harry said in surprise. Why would I be afraid of it? You shouldn't be. Some kids cry when they get into the water. Now, let's introduce ourselves. I'm George. You're Harry. And what should I call your mom? He asked. Amelia, the boy replied, and his mom added, George, can you tell us what else we need for the lessons? George checked with Harry about the equipment he had, then said, everything you need, you already have. But most importantly, he should always have the desire to learn, the desire to win, and to swim. From that day on, Harry started going to the pool twice a week, Tuesday evenings with his mom and Saturday mornings with a neighbor boy. Gary probably found out that Amelia was alone on Saturday mornings and often visited her, hoping for reconciliation. He complained to her about his mother. Apparently, living with her was unbearable for him. Go work somewhere else, Gary. You'll earn money and get away from her guardianship. Maybe even find a woman without a child, Amelia advised him. Time passed. Harry's training schedule changed. Now, instead of Saturdays, they started going swimming on Friday evenings, and by the time they returned home, it was already dark. Soon, Harry was making great progress and enjoying his new activity immensely. Harry began to notice that after the workouts, George started joining them outside more and more often. Then, he and the neighbor boy, Jack, would walk ahead while Amelia and George walked behind. George would see them home and then continue on his way. During these walks, Harry harbored a secret he didn't trust anyone with. He really wanted George to become his father. In their peaceful life, a wonderful event soon occurred. Ava gave birth to a daughter, Kathleen. She asked her friend Amelia to be Kathleen's godmother, and Amelia gladly accepted. On that day, Amelia was surprised to see George as the godfather. The baptism ceremony was solemn and calm. The baby didn't even cry. Amelia was filled with joy as she held Kathleen, remembering that Harry had been baptized on a rainy day, and they had been in a rush. Harry's godmother had been their neighbor, and there had been no godfather at all. Amelia was pleased that everything had worked out so well for Ava. The weather was perfect, and Amelia was not a stranger to Ava's family but rather very close. The godfather was not just Stephen's friend but also someone familiar to Amelia and Harry. In a rush. Harry's godmother had been their neighbor, and there had been no godfather at all. Amelia was pleased that everything had worked out so well for Ava. The weather was perfect, and Amelia was not a stranger to Ava's family but rather very close. The godfather was not just Stephen's friend, but also someone familiar to Amelia and Harry. At that moment, Amelia admitted to herself that she really liked George. She had thought he was married, and certainly had children, especially since all the boys at training practically worshipped him. After the celebration, they all went to a festive dinner. Sitting at Ava's parents' table, George and Amelia were too formal in their conversation. Ava was annoyed. What's this all about? I'm not asking you to call each other relatives, but my friends, stop talking as if George is the boss and Amelia is his subordinate. After the baptism, their relationship became easier, and the tension from Amelia disappeared because Ava had told her that George was not married. George also started treating her and Harry differently. George and Harry began calling each other often. Soon after, when Harry fell ill, he told George their address during a phone call. George immediately came over with different tasty foods and a positive attitude to support the boy who was so sick for the first time that they had to call an ambulance twice. Later, when Amelia was at work, George came several more times, warmed up dinner for Harry, fed him, and helped him with his homework. Ava saw that George was in love with Amelia and decided to talk to her friend. However, an unexpected event occurred that threw Amelia off her usual course. For years, she had hoped that she and Harry's father would meet one day and be together, but fate had its own plans. Amelia and one of her colleagues were sent on a business trip to the city where her parents lived. On one hand, I'm glad, but what about Harry? Amelia wondered. Her companion was a young colleague who had recently married, and he saw this trip as a tragedy. They were sent to a scientific conference where their participation was mandatory. Listen, don't worry. We'll only be there for 5 days, and 2 of those days will be spent traveling. The road isn't just boring speeches, it's romantic in its own way. The new impressions and the kilometers left behind are impressive, so don't be sad. She reassured her colleague, lying on the top bunk in the train carriage. They arrived late at night, were met, and immediately taken to the hotel. The next morning, they were already sitting in the hall, listening to the speakers. Their presentation was scheduled for the 3rd day, and they weren't particularly nervous about it. Both Amelia and her colleague had prepared long speeches that everyone was expected to receive positively. After all, it wasn't an hour-long report. Amelia proposed this format to her superiors will spoil the whole impression of our work if the audience doesn't want to listen to endless words. You agree that even you would lose interest after 10 or 15 minutes. She even prepared a script for her colleague, seeing how upset he was. She visited her parents in the evening, saying she wouldn't stay with them because the hotel was more convenient. Besides, I've been ordered to look after our young colleague. He recently got married and really didn't want to come. Daughter, come visit us in the evenings. Your father and I want to know about this George that Harry keeps telling us about all the time. He's Harry's coach. We know he's a coach. Tell us what kind of person he is, her mother asked anxiously. Her daughter couldn't hide her confusion from her mother, but eventually admitted that she had entrusted Harry to him during her absence. Are you sure about him? He won't do anything bad to Harry. No, don't worry. Everything will be fine, Amelia reassured them. The next day she went to her parents' house again. Her brother and his family were supposed to visit as their mother had decided to host a small family dinner. On the way, Amelia stopped by the flower shop, as was her tradition, to buy her mother a bouquet of flowers. She already had a gift prepared for her father which Stephen had bought for her. Back home, Stephen shared the same hobby as her father, fishing. She simply asked Stephen to buy something fairly expensive, something her father wouldn't have bought himself. Stephen fulfilled her request and even tried to explain to her why this item was needed. However, she interrupted him. Will my father be pleased? Stephen enthusiastically replied, absolutely. And she believed him. Amelia entered the flower shop and lingered at the display. What should I buy? Walking along the row of potted plants, she decided on one. But which one? She handed over with a smile. Here you go, Dad. I hope you like it, she said. Her father unwrapped the package and his eyes lit up when he saw the high-end fishing gear. Wow, Amelia, this is fantastic. Thank you so much, he said, beaming. Amelia felt a warm satisfaction seeing her father's joy. She then handed the 2 pots of violets to her mother. I hope you don't already have these, she said, a little anxious. Her mother admired the vibrant flowers and smiled warmly. These are beautiful, Amelia. Thank you. I'll find a special place for them. As the evening went on, the family sat down to a hearty meal. The conversation was lively, filled with laughter and shared memories. Amelia felt a comforting sense of belonging and nostalgia being back home. Later, as the night grew deeper and the children were put to bed, Amelia sat with her parents in the living room, sipping tea. They asked her about Harry, and she shared stories about his swimming lessons and how well he was doing. You know, Mom, Dad, there's something I need to tell you, Amelia started, feeling a bit nervous. I've been seeing someone. His name is George. He's Harry's swimming coach. He's a wonderful man, and Harry really likes him. Her parents exchanged glances, then her mother spoke. We're happy for you, Amelia. You deserve someone who treats you well and cares for Harry. Her father nodded in agreement. Yes, you do, but be careful. Take your time to get to know him. You've been through a lot. Amelia smiled, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. Thank you. I will. Go work somewhere else, Gary. You'll earn money and get away from her guardianship. Maybe even find a woman without a child, Amelia advised him. The next morning, Amelia felt refreshed and ready for the conference. She left early, promising to return in the evening. As she sat through the various presentations, her thoughts occasionally drifted back to her family and George. That evening, after the conference, Amelia decided to call George to check on Harry. Hi, George. How are things going with Harry? Hi, Amelia. Everything is great. Harry's doing well. He's a bit tired from swimming, but he's happy. We've been having fun, George replied, his voice warm and reassuring. Amelia felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you so much for taking care of him. I really appreciate it. Anytime, Amelia. You just focus on your work and enjoy your time. We'll be here when you get back. Hanging up, Amelia felt more at ease. She spent the next few days balancing her conference duties and visits with her family. Each evening she checked in with George and Harry, feeling more confident in their growing bond. Finally, the conference ended, and Amelia was ready to return home. She said her goodbyes to her family, promising to visit again soon. As she boarded the train back, she couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation and hope for the future. Back in her city, she was greeted by George and Harry at the station. Harry ran up to her, hugging her tightly. "Mom, I missed you." "I missed you too," Harry Amelia said, holding him close. George smiled, carrying her bag. "Welcome back, Amelia. How was your trip?" "It was good, but I'm glad to be home," she replied, feeling a sense of peace and contentment as they headed back together, ready to embrace whatever the future held. Gregory looked taken aback, his face reflecting a mixture of surprise and realization. "I see. Well, he must be quite the boy, just like his mother," he said, trying to maintain a composed demeanor. Amelia felt a pang of irritation. "Yes, he's wonderful, and he's happy and well taken care of. There's nothing more to say." Gregory nodded, sensing Amelia's resistance. "I'm glad to hear that. I just wanted to know if there was any chance for us to start over." Amelia took a deep breath, her emotions churning. "Gregory, the past is behind us. I've moved on, and I think you should too. I'm happy with my life now, and my son is my priority." Gregory's shoulders slumped slightly, but he tried to smile. "I understand. I just wanted to make sure you and your son were okay." "We are," Amelia replied firmly. "Goodbye, Gregory." She turned and walked away, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. As she returned to the hotel, she couldn't help but think about George and how he had become an important part of her and Harry's lives. The rest of the conference went smoothly, and soon Amelia was on her way back home. She was eager to see Harry and George, to return to the routine she had come to cherish. At the station, she was once again greeted by Harry and George. Harry ran up to her, hugging her tightly. "Mom, I missed you." "I missed you too," Harry Amelia said, holding him close. George smiled warmly. "Welcome back, Amelia. How was the conference?" "It was good, but I'm glad to be home," she replied, feeling a sense of peace. As they walked back to the car, Harry chattered excitedly about his week. Amelia listened, smiling, and occasionally glanced at George, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. When they got home, Amelia settled back into her routine. She and George continued to grow closer, spending more time together and supporting each other. Harry thrived under George's mentorship, his swimming skills improving steadily. One evening, after Harry had gone to bed, Amelia and George sat on the porch, enjoying the quiet night. George took her hand, looking into her eyes. "Amelia, I want you to know that I'm here for you, always. I care about you and Harry more than anything." Amelia felt a lump in her throat, tears welling up. "George, you've been amazing. I don't know what I would have done without you." They sat in silence for a moment, the night enveloping them in a comforting embrace. Finally, Amelia spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about the future. About us." George squeezed her hand gently. "So have I. And I know that whatever the future holds, we'll face it together." Amelia nodded, feeling a deep sense of contentment. She had come a long way from the heartache of the past, and now she was ready to embrace the future with the people she loved. Amelia with a kind, knowing smile. "But let's not dwell on the past. It's wonderful to see you again, Amelia." Amelia felt a rush of warmth at the familiar face. "It's great to see you too, Margaret. It's been too long." Margaret nodded. "Time flies, doesn't it? Now, tell me about you. I heard you've been busy and have a wonderful son." Amelia smiled. "Yes, his name is Harry. He's 6 years old now, and he's really into swimming." Margaret's eyes twinkled. "Swimming? That's fantastic. It sounds like you're doing well." "We are," Amelia replied, her thoughts drifting to George and how much he had become a part of their lives. Margaret glanced at Amelia's colleague, who was watching their conversation with polite curiosity. "Well, I won't keep you any longer, but do come by and visit again before you leave. It's always nice to catch up with old friends." "I will, Margaret." "Thank you," Amelia said, giving her a final hug before turning back to her colleague. As they walked to the elevator, her colleague asked, "Who was that?" "An old family friend. She used to know me when I lived here," Amelia explained, feeling a sense of nostalgia. The rest of the week went by quickly. The conference was a success, and Amelia found herself enjoying the professional camaraderie and intellectual stimulation it offered. However, her thoughts frequently returned to Harry and George back home. When the conference finally ended, Amelia felt a surge of excitement to return to her son and the life she had built. As the train carried her back, she felt a newfound clarity and peace. The encounter with Gregory had closed a chapter in her life she hadn't even realized was still open. Arriving at the station, Amelia was greeted by Harry's enthusiastic hug and George's warm smile. It felt like coming home in the truest sense. As they settled back into their routine, Amelia found herself increasingly drawn to George. His unwavering support and kindness made her realize that he was the person she wanted to build a future with. One evening, as they sat on the porch after Harry had gone to bed, Amelia turned to George. "I need to tell you something," she began, her voice steady. George looked at her, concern flickering in his eyes. "What is it, Amelia?" She took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about the future, about us." George's expression softened. "So have I." Amelia smiled, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. "I want us to be together, George. You, me, and Harry. You've become such an important part of our lives, and I can't imagine the future without you." George reached for her hand, his eyes filled with warmth and love. "I've been waiting to hear you say that, Amelia. I love you and Harry more than anything. I want to be there for you always." They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands and looking out into the night, knowing that whatever the future held, they would face it together as a family. Days. The conversation was light and filled with laughter, a welcome relief from the tension Amelia had been feeling. When the conference ended, Amelia returned home with a sense of resolution. She was determined to focus on her future and the well-being of her son. She arrived at the train station to find George and Harry waiting for her, Harry's face lighting up with joy when he saw her. She arrived at the train station to find George and Harry waiting for her, Harry's face lighting up with joy when he saw her. "Mom," Harry exclaimed, running to hug her. George stood back, a warm smile on his face. "It's good to have you back," George said as he took her bag. "It's good to be back," Amelia replied, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. As they drove home, Amelia listened to Harry excitedly recount his week. George chimed in with anecdotes, and Amelia felt a surge of gratitude for his presence in their lives. When they arrived home, Amelia noticed that the house felt different, more like a home, filled with warmth and love. That evening, after putting Harry to bed, Amelia and George sat on the porch, enjoying the quiet of the night. Amelia decided it was time to share her thoughts. "George," she began, "I've been doing a lot of thinking during my trip. About us, about the future." George turned to her, his eyes attentive. "What have you been thinking?" Amelia took a deep breath. "I want us to be a family, George. You, me, and Harry. You've been so wonderful to us, and I can't imagine our lives without you." George reached out and took her hand. "I've been hoping you'd say that, Amelia. I love you both so much. I want to be there for you always." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their emotions settling between them. Amelia felt a sense of relief and joy. She had finally found the family she had always wanted. The following days were filled with a renewed sense of purpose. Amelia felt more confident in her decisions and more at peace with her past. She called Angela and caught up on old times, promising to stay in touch more regularly. She also made a point to spend more quality time with Harry, supporting his passion for swimming and encouraging his dreams. One day, as they were walking home from the pool, Harry looked up at George and asked, "George, can you be my dad?" George knelt down to Harry's level, his eyes misty with emotion. "I would be honored, Harry." Amelia watched the exchange with tears in her eyes, knowing that they had finally found their happy ending. The past was behind them, and the future looked bright. They were a family, bound not by blood, but by love and commitment. And so Amelia, Harry, and George began a new chapter in their lives, one filled with love, support, and endless possibilities. Amelia felt a warmth spread through her as she stepped off the train and was immediately embraced by Harry. George stood by, smiling broadly, while Brenda and her colleagues shared a joyful reunion. The air was filled with excitement and happiness, a stark contrast to the emotions Amelia had felt just a week ago. As they drove home, Harry sat close to Amelia, chattering about his week. George drove, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror with a look of contentment. Amelia felt a sense of peace and belonging, her heart full with the love of her family. That evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Amelia shared stories from her trip. Harry listened intently, his eyes wide with curiosity. George added his own anecdotes, making everyone laugh. The house was filled with warmth and laughter, a stark contrast to the loneliness Amelia had once felt. Later, after Harry had gone to bed, Amelia and George sat together on the porch, enjoying the cool night air. George took her hand, and they sat in comfortable silence for a while. Amelia began softly, "Thank you for everything, for taking care of Harry, for being here for us. I couldn't have done it without you." George squeezed her hand. "Amelia, you don't have to thank me. I love you and Harry. Being here for you is the best thing that's ever happened to me." Amelia leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling a sense of contentment wash over her. "I love you too, George. I feel like we're finally where we're meant to be." As the weeks passed, their bond grew stronger. Amelia felt more confident in her role as a mother and a partner. She made plans to visit Angela, looking forward to the reunion and the chance to introduce Harry to her old friend. When summer vacation arrived, Amelia and Harry packed their bags and set off for Angela's cottage. The trip was filled with excitement and anticipation. George stayed behind, promising to join them later. Angela greeted them with open arms, and Amelia felt a surge of nostalgia as she walked through the familiar landscape. The cottage was beautiful, surrounded by lush greenery and the sounds of nature. Harry immediately took to Angela and her family, making new friends and exploring the area with boundless energy. Amelia and Angela spent hours catching up, reminiscing about old times and sharing their hopes for the future. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Angela turned to Amelia. "You seem so happy, Amelia. It's good to see you like this." Amelia smiled. "I am happy, Angela. For the first time in a long time, I feel like everything is falling into place." Angela nodded. "It's good to see you with George. He seems like a wonderful man." "He is," Amelia agreed. "I never thought I'd find someone like him. He's been a blessing to both me and Harry." As the days went by, Amelia felt more and more at peace. The trip was a reminder of how far she had come and how much she had to look forward to. She cherished the time with Angela, but she also missed George and looked forward to their reunion. When the vacation came to an end, Amelia and Harry returned home with a renewed sense of purpose. George was waiting for them at the station, and Harry ran into his arms with a shout of joy. Amelia watched them, her heart swelling with love. She knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as a family. And that was all she had ever wanted. There was no joy, only indifference. And then Brenda said, "Darling, I've prepared so much that we already agreed we'll dine at our place after all. We live very close by," Brenda explained to Amelia immediately. During dinner, Amelia sat between Harry and George, often feeling their hands touching hers, whether accidentally or intentionally. She and her colleague happily recounted their business trip and proudly shared the applause they had earned at the conference. The rest of the company talked about how much they missed each other. "Well, that's okay," George announced. "Next time I take the kids to their competitions, Brenda, I'll take you along too, and the three of us will have just as much fun," agreed. The whole group laughed cheerfully. Later, they drove to George's place because Amelia's refrigerator had been turned off at home since there was no food there. George rode in a taxi and envied Amelia's colleague for finally hugging Brenda after they left. Meanwhile, Amelia thought about how happy Brenda must have been that she and her husband were together again. In the car, there was an obvious sense of envy, not malicious, but a languid envy that could dissolve with a simple, innocent kiss. The kiss came a bit later from Harry. As he went to bed, he kissed both his mother and George. George looked at Amelia with a warm, steady gaze, and she felt a comforting sense of belonging. The days turned into weeks, and Amelia found herself spending more time with George and Harry as a family unit. George would often come over for dinner, and they would sit together, talking and laughing, sharing their days. Harry's swimming was going well, and he looked forward to every session with George. One evening, as they sat on the porch, George turned to Amelia. "I've been thinking, Amelia, I want us to be more than just friends. I want to be a part of your life and Harry's life. I want us to be a family." Amelia felt a surge of emotion. She had grown to care deeply for George, and the thought of building a life together filled her with hope. "George, I feel the same way. I want us to be a family too." They embraced, and from that moment, their relationship blossomed. George was a constant presence in their lives, and Amelia found herself happier than she had ever been. Harry thrived with the love and support of both his mother and George. As time passed, they faced challenges together, but their bond only grew stronger. Amelia no longer thought of Gregory or the past. Her focus was entirely on the future with George and Harry. One sunny afternoon, as they walked in the park, George turned to Amelia and said, "I have something to ask you." He got down on one knee and pulled out a small box. "Amelia, will you marry me?" Amelia gasped, her heart pounding with joy. "Yes, George, yes," she exclaimed. Harry jumped up and down with excitement, and George slipped the ring onto Amelia's finger. They embraced, knowing that their future together was filled with love and happiness. From that day forward, they worked together as a family, supporting each other through thick and thin. Amelia, George, and Harry built a life filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities, knowing that they were stronger together than they could ever be apart. "I only have a shower in my bathroom. Will that be okay for you, or do you want to soak in your own tub?" George asked, averting his gaze from Amelia. "Yes. I prefer to get home. It feels more familiar to me there," she replied. "Well then, what are we waiting for? We'll pack up all your things now, including some books so you don't have to lug them later, and head over," George suggested. Half an hour later, Amelia was luxuriating in her own bathtub, enjoying a peace and warmth of heart she hadn't felt in a long time. She imagined stepping out of the bath in a cozy terrycloth robe. In the morning, she woke to a light kiss from George. "Go back to sleep, it's still early, and I'll go. Harry might wake up soon and be scared," he whispered, then left, telling her to come over later. "We'll be waiting for you at breakfast," he added. Farewell again, he kissed her, but this time it was different, and she liked this kiss much more. Amelia lay for a few more minutes, then got up and started cleaning. In the week she was away, there had been some changes here, and she was surprised to see a pot of pink violets on the windowsill in the bedroom and a small pitcher of water on the nightstand. She also noticed a framed photograph in the living room where she and Harry stood smiling by the park entrance. Yesterday evening, Amelia noticed that the faucet in the bathroom no longer leaked, and an unfamiliar melancholy enveloped her. Then the phone rang. Harry, Amelia saw and answered. "Mom, are you still asleep? Breakfast is ready. Come over to us soon." "I'll be there soon," she replied. Quickly getting ready, Amelia ran to George's place, stopping at the store on the way to pick up her favorite cake for breakfast. They had hot sandwiches with cheese and sausage and yogurt. "Wow, both pleasant and healthy. I also brought something not so healthy," Amelia remarked. "Yeah, that's bad," George added. "But we'll eat some unhealthy stuff too, right, Harry?" "I think so," the boy replied. "The three of us will manage for sure." They ate in silence for a while, then started talking one by one. "You know, Mom," Harry began mysteriously, "it's nice here, but it's cramped." "Yeah, home is always better," George added. "So what's the good part when you, George, are left here alone?" Harry asked somewhat theatrically and unnaturally. "Who's the author of this drama?" Amelia asked sternly. The men lowered their heads, but Amelia guessed herself and said, "Ava gave you the idea too, yeah." George said sadly, "You silly men, and Ava is clever, coming up with who knows what." Amelia grumbled, "Ava is clever, coming up with who knows what." For a puppy, which they happily agreed to, and named him Max. Life settled into a comforting routine for Amelia, George, Harry, and Max. Amelia continued her work as a college teacher, finding fulfillment in shaping young minds. George's massage therapy practice thrived, and he still coached swimming, now with even more passion and dedication. As the years passed, Amelia and George talked about expanding their family further. They often visited Angela's house in the countryside, enjoying the fresh air and dreaming about their own piece of land. They discussed the possibility of having another child, and Amelia's heart swelled with happiness at the thought of giving Harry a sibling. Their journey together had its challenges and joys, but through it all, they built a strong, loving family. Each milestone, from Harry's adoption to Max's antics and their dream of a home, brought them closer together, forming a tapestry of memories they cherished deeply. Amelia's life had come full circle, filled with love, family, and the contentment she had longed for. With George by her side, Harry, now officially their son, and their daughter Rebecca on the way, Amelia found solace in the warmth of their home and the embrace of their loving family. The painful memories of her past with Gregory had faded into insignificance, overshadowed by the joy and fulfillment she found in her present life. As they settled into their new home and prepared for the arrival of their daughter, Amelia reflected on the journey that had led her here. She had overcome hardships, made difficult decisions, and ultimately found happiness in unexpected places. Through it all, she held on to the belief that family was indeed the most important thing in life, a sentiment shared by George, Harry, and now, their expanding circle of loved ones. With their new chapter unfolding, Amelia looked forward to the future with optimism and gratitude, knowing that the challenges they faced had only strengthened the bonds that held them together. She was determined to cherish and protect the happiness they had found, savoring every moment of their journey as a family.